Hi everybody, Dr. Heather here, beginning of week 4. Let me just start by saying how impressed I was with those of you who submitted either in writing or video the results of your experiment for the week on taking one item, or in some cases several items that we would normally throw away and reusing them. And for all of you, whether you recycled, reused plastic bags or paper cups, or decided to downgrade from individual plastic water bottles or coffee cups to something larger, just in that 1 week period, you made significant discoveries, I think, about how much waste we each as individuals generate each and every day. And you only selected one product. So kudos to you guys for that. And then this week, what we're going to do is kind of take that notion of being a single person and one and ramp it up to this notion of gender, race, and the environment, and environmentalization in general. So the video, the PowerPoint lecture that you're going to see is actually not coming from me. It comes from a friend of mine in Baltimore, Maryland, who works with inner city populations who are experiencing what we call environmental racism. And this is kind of at the crux of the core of this class of gender, race, and the environment. Because what this video explores is the way in which we, one, perceive race, and two, act upon race to discriminate against other populations, so populations that are different than we are. And this is, for anthropology, or at least for me personally as an anthropologist, at the crux of some of the complexities of what we're experiencing now as an American society. I think that we have, as a people, not adequately addressed the history and the way in which this country was formed. The country was taken from individuals who already lived here at this point in time, right? So they were embedded in the environment and they were making their way. And then infrastructure in our country was built by enslaved people, whether they were enslaved from Africa or whether they were the people that came from China and Southeast Asia that built our railroads. And even people like in my family who fled because of, who ended up being indentured servants because they fled out of starvation. And so that was a kind of slavery as well. So at the crux of this is this notion of inequality between individuals. So it's something that we see time and time again when we look at the way in which people relate to the environment and how it manifests itself in health. So when you're going through the readings for this week we're talking about how your local, and in particular, you're reading about Majora Carter, who is an African-American woman who won a MacArthur Fellowship Genius Grant several years ago, and she works in the inner city of the Bronx, which is predominantly African-American. And then you're also going to watch a video from Sandra Steingraber, who is originally from Pekin, Illinois, which is also an impoverished area of Illinois. So it's not a suburb, it's not downtown, it's where working class people live, and they live close by to some pretty nasty industrial plants. So when we start to get into these profiles of the women that we're reading, Majora Carter and Sandra Steingraber, I want you to think about this notion of what it is they're doing. And so coming from like the tenets of Buddhism, there's this notion of an individual being a bodhisattva. And a bodhisattva is somebody who chooses to serve others through kindness, and that's how they dedicate their lives. So this is coming from a book called Green Buddhism that I picked up. I think I was in Seattle a couple of months ago, maybe in April or May it was, and I thought this was really interesting because it hit me that the women that we're profiling here, the individuals that we're profiling, really are giving their entire being to fighting for the good, not of themselves necessarily, but for the good of others. And that really is what a bodhisattva is, right? Somebody who dedicates their entire life to doing that. Now, that said, it's not easy, right? Because you come up against lots and lots of obstacles. And in particular, when we're looking at environmental conflicts, there are battles between the dominant group and the challenging group, right? So if you think about the narrative now between fossil fuels and green energy, that's exactly this, right? That is a conflict between the values of those who are in power right now, and think about them in terms of ethnic groups and gender groups, and those who are fighting for something for the long term that we may not be around to benefit from. So there's that. There's also the irritation and the frustration that arises when you put so much time and effort and energy into something, and then the legislation doesn't pass or it's not fulfilled, right? Then it's easy just to be lazy about it. And I think it would be interesting for you guys. Last week, you all did, one little action looking at how much of an impact you could have with one particular item that you would throw away. And that was a class assignment, which forced you to do it. It wasn't easy, right? Will you fall back into that laziness paradigm, or will you continue to try to be a little bodhisattva and make a difference? Then there's the other thing about underestimating your own abilities or your own worth in the system. And I think, again, this is where a lot of you saw just exactly how much one person can save from the landfill, right? Whether it's a cotton ball or a coffee cup. In a week's worth of time, you guys amassed a tremendous amount of waste saved. And so never underestimate what one person can do. And then finally is this other thing that we kind of run against too, this notion of burnout, because we all get really tired about fighting for whatever it is that we value. And this is really difficult long-term when it comes to environmental issues as well. So again, when you're going through the readings of Majora Carter, and when you're looking at the video from Sandra Steingraber, and I'll post some other links to her, she's been fighting, both of these women have been fighting this kind of environmental challenge pretty much their entire adult lives. So they are, in my eyes, kind of little bodhisattvas, little people who are trying to make change for the good. And if you can just take one of these lessons from this course this summer semester and continue with that, then you too become these little, good little teachers that help educate the larger world about what's going on when it comes to environmental problems. So I'll post discussion board questions. We'll come back to it, start to think about what your endangered species paper is going to be about, which is next week. And I'll see you online. Have a great week. Bye.